There's a moment in every trader's day when the line between discipline and impulse begins to blur. It doesn't start with a big mistake. It starts with one small trade, one tiny deviation, and a quiet voice that says just one more. You think you're in control, but you're not trading anymore. You're chasing. And before you even realize it, the plan is gone. The rules are gone. You're trapped in the spiral that every trader knows, but few ever escape. Overtrading. It's not about greed. It's about emotion, the need to feel in control again when everything inside you feels uncertain. But what if you could stop the spiral before it starts? What if discipline had a structure, a mental circuit breaker that brings you back to awareness before chaos takes over? That's what this episode is about. A simple rule, a boundary, a reset, the 3-strike rule. Because trading mastery isn't about knowing when to act. It's about knowing when to stop. This is Mind Over Markets, where psychology becomes strategy and every decision begins with awareness. It starts quietly. One small loss, one impulsive click. You tell yourself you'll fix it, then another and another, until suddenly you're not trading anymore, you're chasing. You're trying to feel okay again. Every trader knows this spiral. It's not born from greed. It's born from discomfort, from the desperate need to make the pain stop. Overtrading is not a lack of strategy. It's a lack of stillness. Because when the mind is restless, it seeks motion. And the market gives endless opportunities for motion, click, buy, sell, react, repeat. You start convincing yourself that one more trade will calm the storm, but each one only feeds it. That's how most bad days unfold, not from bad setups, but from emotional momentum. The danger of overtrading is not just financial, it's psychological. It creates a loop of self-betrayal. You promise yourself you'll stop after this one. You break that promise, and a small crack forms in your trust. Do it enough times, and you stop believing in your own word. And when you stop trusting yourself, no system can save you, because the system was never the problem. The operator was overwhelmed. The human mind is addicted to action. Doing feels safer than waiting. Activity feels like control. But in trading, that illusion is lethal. The market rewards those who can hold still in uncertainty. It punishes those who try to fight discomfort with movement. You can't fight fire with more fire, and you can't fix chaos with another trade. Let's be honest. You've had those days. The red day that turned into a blur of clicks. The moment you said just one more, the day your plan disappeared under emotion, and at the end, you stare at the screen tired, ashamed, and empty. It's not the money that hurts. It's the realization that you knew better and still couldn't stop. That's what overtrading really steals from you. Not capital, but confidence. Because confidence isn't built by winning. It's built by keeping your word with yourself. So the question becomes, how do you stop the spiral? How do you draw the line between awareness and addiction? That's where the 3-strike rule begins. Not as a punishment, not as a superstition, but as a boundary, a soft wall between reason and reaction. 3 strikes, 3 signals from your mind that awareness is slipping away. 3 chances to reclaim control before ego takes the wheel. Strike 1. It's small, a simple mistake. A trade you took too early, a setup you forced. You notice it, you breathe, you acknowledge it. That's awareness. That's the first alarm. Strike 2. You start to feel the heat. The body tightens. The mind says, I need to make it back. Your breathing shortens, your mouse moves faster. This is where emotion enters the trade. You're still in the game, but the line between decision and impulse is getting thinner. Strike 3. You feel the flood, adrenaline, frustration, pride. Logic fades into noise. You tell yourself, I can handle it. But you're no longer trading setups. You're trading emotion. That's when the rule activates. You stop. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that beyond the third strike, it's no longer you behind the mouse, it's your chemistry. The three-strike rule isn't a strategy. It's a safeguard for your awareness. It's the circuit breaker for your nervous system. Because by the third mistake, you're not losing to the market. You're losing to biology, to dopamine, cortisol, and ego. And no technical setup can outtrade that. Think about the logic of it. Airplanes have emergency limits. Athletes have rest intervals. Surgeons have timeouts. Even machines need cooldowns. Why do traders think they can operate indefinitely under stress? The truth is simple. After 3 emotional hits, your decision-making degrades exponentially. You start seeing what you want, not what is. That's not intuition, that's distortion. The 3-strike rule exists to freeze that distortion before it multiplies. You might say, but what if the next trade would have been the winner? That's ego talking. That's the illusion of control. The truth is, if you can't follow your own rule, you've already lost something more valuable than a trade your self-trust. And once self-trust is gone, profit means nothing. Because money without discipline is just a countdown to disaster. The hardest part of trading is not holding through drawdown. It's stopping when everything inside you screams to continue. But that's where growth lives, not in the win, in the restraint. The 3-strike rule teaches restraint as ritual. It transforms stopping into strength. Because real control isn't holding on tighter, it's knowing when to let go. There's a calm that comes the first time you actually follow it. You feel the urge to trade again, but you don't. You close the platform. You breathe. At first it feels like loss. Then it feels like peace. Then it feels like power. Because the moment you can stop yourself from reacting to chaos, you're no longer a prisoner of it. That's what this rule gives you, not perfection, but protection. Every trader needs a boundary, something that separates discipline from destruction. For some, it's a daily loss limit. For others, it's time. For the wise, it's awareness measured in strikes. 3 reminders that you are human. 3 chances to choose clarity over chaos. 3 breaths between emotion and execution. The market doesn't punish mistakes, it punishes repetition. And the 3-strike rule breaks that repetition. It's simple, it's human, and it works, not because it changes the market, but because it changes the trader. By the time you reach the first strike, your nervous system is still calm enough to notice it. It's a whisper, a tap on the shoulder, the market reminding you that awareness is fading. That first mistake isn't danger, it's information. It tells you something inside is shifting. Maybe impatience, maybe fear, maybe ego stretching its wings again. The first strike is your invitation to breathe, to pause before the noise grows louder. If you can respond to that first signal with calm curiosity, you stop the spiral before it ever begins. But most traders don't. They dismiss it. They say it's fine, I'll fix it. And in that one sentence, they trade awareness for justification. Strike 2 comes faster. The second mistake never feels like a mistake. It feels like recovery. Your body has already shifted into reaction mode. Heart rate rises, dopamine spikes, logic narrows. The prefrontal cortex, the part of you that plans, starts to dim. The limbic system takes over screaming for redemption. You stop trading probability. You start trading emotion. That's why strike 2 is dangerous. You still believe you're in control, but control has already left the room. The 3-strike rule isn't designed to shame you here. It's designed to remind you that your biology is louder than your beliefs. Awareness doesn't mean you feel calm. It means you can see that you're not. Then comes strike 3, the final flare before the blackout. Your breathing shortens. Your hands move on instinct. Your brain floods with adrenaline. every candle looks like opportunity or threat, nothing in between. This is where traders lose accounts, but more importantly, they lose perspective. Because after the third strike, you're no longer responding to the market. You're responding to your own chemical storm. That's why the rule says stop. Not because you're weak, but because continuing would be unconscious. Stopping here isn't quitting. It's waking up. Every strike is a mirror. It shows you a layer of yourself. Strike 1, the impatient mind. Strike 2, the emotional ego. Strike 3, the unregulated self. If you can see these layers as feedback, not failure, you begin to rewire your trading mind. You start recognizing the sensations before they escalate, the shallow breath, the tension in your jaw, the slight forward lean toward the screen. These are your early warnings. Physical data points that awareness can use, because the body always knows before the brain admits. Here's the truth no one teaches. The market doesn't break traders, their nervous systems do. Every decision you make under stress is filtered through survival circuitry designed for predators, not price charts. You can't out-trade adrenaline. You can only out-awareness it. That's what the three-strike rule trains the art of catching the switch. The moment when your system goes from logic to fight or flight. If you can recognize that transition even once you've already changed the outcome of the day. So how do you use it in practice? You define what a strike means specifically, personally. For some, it's any trade outside the plan. For others, it's breaking risk parameters or entering a setup you didn't pre-validate. Whatever it is, write it down. Because discipline lives in definition. Then every time it happens, mark it. Physically. A pen, a notebook, a small tally. The act itself breaks the emotional loop. Writing forces awareness. It slows time for a second long enough for consciousness to catch up to impulse. When you reach the third mark, don't negotiate. Don't justify. Just stop. Close the platform. Step away. Breathe. You are not running from the market. You are resetting the operator. That reset is sacred. It's where emotional data turns into wisdom. Ask yourself 3 questions. What triggered each strike? What emotion was I avoiding? What truth was I ignoring? Answer honestly, and you won't just trade better. You'll understand yourself better. Because trading isn't therapy, but it will reveal everything that therapy would. There's science behind this stillness. When you pause, dopamine begins to settle, cortisol drops. The prefrontal cortex re-engages. You regain access to reason. You remember who you are. That's when you start to feel something new control without tension. The kind of calm that doesn't depend on results. The kind that feels like clarity. Over time, the 3-strike rule stops being external. It becomes internalized. You don't need to count anymore. Your awareness counts for you. You start sensing when emotion is rising. You start catching the spiral earlier. Eventually, you don't need 3 strikes. 1 signal is enough. That's when you know the lesson has moved from the notebook into the nervous system. You've turned discipline from effort into instinct. There's a moment that always surprises traders when they begin following this rule seriously. They realize how much of their trading wasn't about markets at all. It was about emotion, about seeking relief, validation, significance. Once that realization lands, overtrading loses its power. Because you see it for what it is, not a strategy flaw, but a coping mechanism. And coping mechanisms lose strength the moment you look at them consciously. That's the quiet miracle of awareness. Every strike is a signal, not a sentence. It says pause. It says come back. It says remember who's really trading. You can't eliminate mistakes. You can only shorten their lifespan. The 3-strike rule does exactly that. It compresses chaos into clarity. It turns reaction into reflection. And reflection is where mastery begins. There comes a moment in every trader's life when you realize that the hardest skill to master isn't entry or exit, it's ending. Ending the day, ending the trade, ending the impulse before it ends you. Because stopping feels unnatural. The mind equates stillness with weakness, but stillness is strength disguised as surrender. The ego wants continuation. It feeds on unfinished stories. It whispers just one more. You can fix it. You're better than this. But that voice isn't guidance. It's fear wearing confidence. The three-strike rule silences that voice. It teaches you that mastery is not in how long you last, but in how quickly you recognize when to step back. Most traders don't burn out because of losses. They burn out because they never stop. Even when the screen is off, the mind keeps trading. It replays every entry, every mistake, every what if. That constant mental noise is a form of overtrading too. And the only cure for it is deliberate interruption. The pause, the boundary, the line that says enough for today. That line isn't the end of your edge. It's the beginning of your clarity. Stopping is an act of faith. Faith that the market will still be here tomorrow. Faith that discipline compounds quietly even when profit doesn't. Every time you honor that third strike, you're telling your nervous system, we choose awareness over adrenaline. And little by little, the body learns that safety doesn't come from winning, it comes from staying conscious. This is how you rebuild trust with yourself. Not through flawless performance, but through consistent restraint. Ego hates restraint. It equates stopping with defeat. But ego is short-sighted. It only sees the trade. Awareness sees the trader. When you step away, you're not losing momentum. You're resetting the machinery that creates it. The paradox of discipline is that every pause strengthens the pattern that keeps you in the game. Because what you repeat, you reinforce, and what you stop, you weaken. Each time you honor the rule, you weaken impulsivity. Each time you ignore it, you strengthen chaos. There is a strange kind of peace that follows real restraint. It feels like silence. It feels like control without effort, like the mind exhaling. In that silence, you begin to see trading for what it really is, not a battle for profit, but a practice in presence. The market is the mirror. Your reaction is the reflection. When you can look into that mirror without flinching, without forcing, without needing to change what you see, you've already won the only game that matters. The three-strike rule isn't magic. It won't make you perfect. It makes you aware. It interrupts the trance of overtrading long enough for you to remember who's behind the keyboard. It's a small rule with a profound purpose to restore humanity inside a machine of numbers. Because in the end, you're not trading charts. You're trading states of mind. There's a moment after you stop for the day when guilt tries to return. It tells you you've done too little, that discipline cost you opportunity. But that guilt fades quickly when you realize what you actually gained. You gained self-respect. You gained tomorrow. You gained the space to think again, to breathe again, to plan again. And that space, that clear space between reaction and response, is where every successful trader lives. The three-strike rule doesn't end overtrading because it limits you. It ends overtrading because it reminds you that limits are love. Boundaries are self-respect made visible. When you respect them, you start trading from balance instead of fear. You start acting from clarity instead of noise. And suddenly the market feels quieter, not because it changed, but because you did. So tomorrow when the charts open and the noise returns, remember this: 3 strikes, 3 moments of awareness, 3 chances to choose discipline over damage. Each strike is not failure, it's feedback. Each pause is not weakness, it's wisdom. And when you can finally stop without regret, that's when the market stops owning your emotions. That's when trading becomes what it was always meant to be: a mirror for consciousness, a practice. In presence, a journey from reaction to awareness. You don't need more trades. You need more truth. You don't need to trade longer. You need to trade clearer. And when clarity becomes your edge, no storm in the market can move you. That's what the three-strike rule really teaches. Not how to trade, but how to stay awake. Mind over markets, where discipline meets awareness and every trade begins with consciousness. The market will test you every day. It will tempt you to chase, to prove, to trade longer than you should. But discipline isn't about control, it's about protection. It's the shield that keeps clarity alive when emotion demands chaos. 3 strikes, 3 chances to come back to awareness, 3 moments to remember that the mind behind the trade matters more than the trade itself. You don't lose when you stop, you lose when you refuse to. The 3-strike rule isn't a limit, it's freedom. It ends overtrading, not by suppressing you, but by guiding you back to the version of yourself that trades with consciousness, not compulsion. So the next time you feel that impulse rise, pause, count your strikes, and remember, discipline isn't punishment, it's peace. You're listening to Mind Over Markets. Trade with awareness, trade with patience. And when the mind starts to spiral, stop, breathe, and start again.